Welcome to the lesson, Energy and Matter in Ecosystems, where you'll learn how energy and matter flow through an ecosystem. Everything shown here, including the leopard, antelope, and plants, is made up of matter. Unfortunately for the antelope, the leopard is gaining energy by eating it. The vocabulary words and phrases for this lesson are energy, matter, law of conservation of energy, law of conservation of mass, energy pyramid, and carbon cycle. Do you ever feel like you need an extra boost of energy? All living things do. When the Venus flytrap needs extra energy, it doesn't go for a power bar or an energy drink. Instead, it goes for a nice, juicy fly. The Venus flytrap is one of several carnivorous plants. A carnivore is an organism that eats mostly plants. Yep, a Venus flytrap is a lot different from most plants. You see, most plants get their energy from the sun. But the Venus flytrap gets its energy from both the sun and from insects. How do you define energy? Scientists define it as the ability to do work or cause a change. For example, the energy from food allows animals to move and grow. Matter, on the other hand, is anything that has mass and volume. Matter exists ordinarily as a solid, liquid, or gas. In order to survive, living things must get and use materials or matter for energy. Click on the slides to see how plants and animals use matter and energy in an ecosystem. You probably know that plants use energy from the sun to make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. Because plants produce their own food, we call them producers. Do you know how photosynthesis works? Look at the arrows to see what the plant takes in and gives off during the process. They take in the energy of sunlight, carbon dioxide gas from the air, and water from the soil. Plants use those materials to produce sugars called carbohydrates, which they store as food. The food is what provides plants with energy. As a byproduct of photosynthesis, the leaves give off oxygen gas. Coincidentally, animals use this oxygen to breathe. Carbon dioxide and water aren't the only kinds of matter that plants need. Plants also need other nutrients to live and grow. Plants absorb nutrients through their roots. The most important plant nutrient is nitrogen. Plants need nitrogen in large amounts. They can't survive without it. Rabbits and other animals can't produce their own food the way that plants can. Instead, they must consume or eat other animals to get energy. Because animals consume for food energy, we call them consumers. Rabbits belong to a group of consumers called herbivores. Herbivores are like vegetarians. They eat mostly plant matter. Eagles, on the other hand, do not eat plants. The bald eagle is at the top of the food chain in this ecosystem. It eats mostly other animals, including rabbits. Animals that eat other animals are called carnivores. Let's review. The bald eagle got its energy from eating the rabbit. The rabbit got its energy from eating the plant. The plant got its energy from the sun. As you can probably tell, The sun is the primary source of energy in almost all ecosystems. We can use feeding relationships in an ecosystem to draw a diagram called an energy pyramid. An energy pyramid shows how energy is lost to the environment as it passes from one organism to the next. Each level of an energy pyramid is called a trophic level. The word trophic comes from the Greek word meaning trophy, meaning food. This word reminds you that energy and food go hand in hand. The size of the trophic level represents the amount of energy stored as food in the organisms at that level. Click a trophic level to learn more. The base of an energy pyramid is the lowest trophic level and is made up of producers, such as plants. This level contains the most stored energy in the form of food. That's why it's the largest part of the pyramid. The second trophic level, which contains primary consumers, is smaller than the area in the base. Do you know why? When a rabbit eats a plant, only about 10% of the energy in the plant gets stored in the rabbit. The rabbit uses the remaining 90% of the energy for life processes, such as building and repairing body tissues, moving around, reproducing, and keeping warm. The energy is lost to the environment as heat. The lost energy is the reason why the second level of this energy pyramid is smaller than the base. About 90% less energy is stored inside it. The third level of the energy pyramid contains the secondary consumers. When a bald eagle eats a rabbit, only 10% of the energy in the rabbit gets stored in the bald eagle. The bald eagle uses the remaining 90% of the energy for life processes such as respiration and reproduction. Just because the bald eagle uses this energy does not mean the energy is destroyed. Instead, it is converted to another form, heat, and is lost to the environment. The top level of the pyramid contains tertiary consumers, or carnivores. It is the smallest part of the pyramid because it takes a lot of energy to support a top predator in the ecosystem. An energy pyramid illustrates the law of conservation of energy, that no matter how much energy is transferred or transformed, all of the energy is still present in one form or another. You know that energy is not the only thing that moves in an ecosystem. Matter matters too. That is, matter such as water, nitrogen, phosphorus, oxygen, and carbon, which also cycle through the ecosystem. And just as energy cannot be produced from nothing or destroyed, neither can matter. That's what the law of conservation of mass tells us. This law states that mass is neither produced nor destroyed in ordinary chemical reactions. As the cycling of matter in ecosystems is all about ordinary chemical reactions. Click the images to learn more about the different cycles of matter. Phosphorus is another important nutrient in ecosystems. The phosphorus cycle is different from other nutrient cycles because it doesn't involve a gas phase. That is, there is not much phosphorus in the air. The main source of phosphorus is in rocks. Weathering removes phosphorus from the rocks and distributes it in the soil and water. Plants take up phosphorus from the soil. The phosphorus moves to animals when they eat the plants. Then, when the plants and animals die and decompose, the phosphorus is returned to the soil. Simple stuff, really. The water cycle describes how water moves through the Earth's surface and atmosphere. Follow the arrows in the picture. Do you see how water evaporates into the air as water vapor, cools and then condenses into clouds and falls back to Earth as precipitation? Precipitation is just a fancy word for water falling from the atmosphere in the form of rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Precipitation can run off from the Earth's surface into bodies of water, or it can soak into the ground. In either case, it replenishes the water that was lost through evaporation. When water vapor also enters the atmosphere when plants expel it from their leaves during photosynthesis, that's called transpiration. It's like evaporation, but it takes place in plants instead of bodies of water. Remember how nitrogen is a really important nutrient for plants? Well, it's pretty important for other organisms too. Nitrogen moves between organisms, soil, and the atmosphere in the nitrogen cycle. Bacteria are a really important part of this cycle. Bacteria in the soil take up nitrogen from the air, which plants can't use directly, and change it into a form of nitrogen that plants can use. When animals eat the plants, they absorb the nitrogen. Then, when the plants and animals die, they decompose and the nitrogen returns to the soil. There, other soil bacteria change the organic nitrogen into a form of nitrogen that goes into the air. Pretty neat, huh? Almost all living things need oxygen. Humans and other animals take in or absorb oxygen gas from the atmosphere. They use oxygen for the processes of cellular respiration, which produces energy in living cells and then releases carbon dioxide gas into the atmosphere. In turn, carbon dioxide is taken up by plants for use in photosynthesis. Remember? Photosynthesis is a process in which plants use energy from the sun, along with water, carbon dioxide, and nutrients, to produce their own food. As a byproduct of photosynthesis, plants release oxygen back into the atmosphere. And so it goes. Carbon is an important building block for all organisms. The carbon cycle is a process by which carbon flows through the environment to living organisms and back again. This cycle has all kinds of sources and sinks. If something takes in more carbon than it gives off, it is a carbon sink. If it gives off more carbon than it takes in, it is a carbon source. Click on the parts of the diagram to learn more. Plants are a carbon sink. During photosynthesis, plants and algae take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, sunlight, and water to produce food and oxygen. Respiration is a source of carbon. The cells of living things undergo a process called cellular respiration, in which cells use oxygen to release energy from other organic molecules. During this process, the cells release carbon dioxide gas into the environment as a byproduct. By the way, it's not just animals that undergo cellular respirations. Plants do too, as do many other organisms. Volcanic activity and eruptions can release large amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Oceans and other large bodies of water are carbon reservoirs or sinks because they can dissolve carbon dioxide.